My name is Ashley. I have a daughter named Sophia. That lively Christmas morning, my daughter was sitting on the edge of the sofa. Her little legs swung in the air, and her eyes sparkled with sweet anticipation. Around her, her cousins tore at wrapping paper with enthusiasm, shouting with joy and showing off their presents to each other. One of them held a shimmering pink tablet, while another jumped incessantly with a remote-controlled drone. The room vibrated with the contagious excitement of the children. Sophia watched everything with a serene smile, patiently waiting for her turn. In her small world, grandmothers love their grandchildren unconditionally, and presents arrive adorned with fancy bows and bearing each person's name. I searched incessantly for her name on some tag, on some bag hidden beneath the tree. There had to be something for her. But the last present was handed out, and she was still there empty-handed. Her eyes met mine, and in a soft whisper, she asked, "Did Grandma forget about me?" I turned to Susan, my mother-in-law, and asked gently, "Wouldn't there be any more? Maybe one got lost." She didn't even hesitate. "She's not really family," she said with a cutting naturalness. Without remorse, without hesitation. Her voice was cold and clear, as if she were merely describing the weather. "She's adopted. It's not the same thing." Sophia heard every word. She didn't cry, not at that moment. She just nodded, as if that explained everything. Then, she lowered her eyes to her own hands and clasped them in her lap, as if trying to take up less space. I felt like a punch had landed in my stomach. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I wanted to protect her, to say something, anything. But I was paralyzed. And worst of all, no one else said anything. The cousins exchanged quick glances. My sister-in-law looked away. Joe sat beside me, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on his mother. But even he didn't speak. We stayed for dinner. We went through the rituals of the evening. Sophia never brought up the subject again. That night, back in the guest room, Joe opened the drawer of his suitcase and took out a manila envelope. He looked at me and said, "I brought this in case she did something like this. I was hoping I wouldn't need to use it." He left the house alone, shortly after midnight, with the envelope in his hand. I didn't ask what was inside. I didn't need to. Whatever he said to her, whatever she read in that envelope, she didn't laugh the next morning. And she never referred to Sophia as not being family again. That happened last Christmas. It should have been one of those big family gatherings where everything looks picture perfect. The fireplace crackling, matching pajamas, cider on the stove, children running through the house as if it were a playground. Susan, my mother-in-law, dedicates herself wholeheartedly to these occasions. She has a holiday style worthy of a Pinterest board. She's the type of person who places linen napkins folded into the shape of trees and identifies every cheese on the board with a little chalkboard sign. She's also the type of woman who believes in how things should be. I've been married to her son, Joe, for 10 years. We met in college, and from day one he was this calm, thoughtful, and quietly intense guy. He was never the loudest person in the room, but he was always the one who listened the most attentively. He's the one who knows what you need before you even say it. When I fell in love with him, I also fell in love with the idea of building a family with someone who truly understood what love should be. It wasn't easy for us. We struggled to have children for years. For miscarriages, 2 failed IVF attempts, many sleepless nights just holding each other in the dark, saying nothing because there was nothing left to say. Eventually, we started talking about adoption. It wasn't our plan B, it became our best decision. We found Sophia through a local agency. She was 5 years old when we met her. I still remember the first time she held my hand. She didn't say a word. She just slid her little fingers into mine as we walked through the park. And I knew that was it. That was my daughter. Sophia is light in every room she enters. She loves to paint, especially animals. She names the squirrels in our backyard. She laughs at her own jokes, even when no one else understands them. She is kind, caring, and so deeply thoughtful that it sometimes hurts. From the day she came home, Joe was a father. Not a stepfather, not an adoptive father, just a father. She started calling me Mom on her own. One night while I was brushing her hair, I didn't even correct her, I just cried. We have never treated her as if she were anything other than our own. But that doesn't mean everyone else followed suit. Susan was polite when we introduced Sophia. Cold, but polite. She didn't say anything cruel, not at first. But she never really saw her. She didn't learn her favorite colors. She didn't ask her questions. She didn't make the same effort she made with our nephews. Still, I told myself she would eventually come around. I wanted to believe she just needed time. Joe was more cautious. He knew his mother better than I did and didn't expect much. But he gave her the benefit of the doubt for Sophia's sake. So when Susan invited the whole family to her house that Christmas, we accepted. We packed the car, loaded up presents and snacks, and drove 6 hours to my mother-in-law's house. Sophia was radiant with excitement. She made cards for each of her cousins. She could hardly wait to see the large tree that Susan always set up in the entrance hall. She even brought her favorite dress because she wanted to look grown up. I remember looking at her in the back seat, singing along to Christmas carols, clutching her teddy bear. And I remember thinking, this year will be different. This year she'll feel it. She'll feel like she belongs. The house was full of noise and warmth when we arrived. Siblings, cousins, pets. Sophia ran straight into the chaos as if she were at home. I saw her hug Susan. I saw Susan pat her head, the way she might pat the child of a neighbor. It wasn't unkindness, but there was a cold distance. Still, I smiled, clinging to hope. Maybe it was just awkwardness. Maybe love doesn't come naturally to everyone, but that doesn't mean it won't come with time. I helped with dinner, Joe played with the children, and Sophia helped hand out reindeer-shaped cookies. Everything seemed right. Everything seemed almost normal, until the next morning, until the presents. Until my daughter sat in a circle of children opening gifts, watching them unwrap joy while her own hands remained empty. And everything I had hoped for shattered right in front of me. We had finished breakfast, and all the children were buzzing with anticipation because it was present time at Susan's house. This wasn't just an event. It was the event. She made a whole production out of it, piling the gifts under the towering Christmas tree, using different colored wrapping paper for each child, having everyone sit in a circle, and distributing the presents one by one while everyone watched. Sophia practically bounced with excitement. She looked at the tree and then at me, whispering, "I think mine is the purple one with the snowman." I smiled and nodded, even though I hadn't seen her name on any of the tags. I tried to ignore the uneasy feeling in my chest. Maybe hers was hidden behind the tree. Maybe it was still in the guest room closet. Maybe Susan was saving it for last. The presents started being opened rapidly. Squeals, giggles, everyone showing off new toys, gadgets, shiny jackets. Sophia clapped for each cousin as if it were their birthday. Then, the pile under the tree began to dwindle quickly. 5 children, 10 presents. Then 3 children, 2 presents. 1 child, no presents with Sophia's name. And she realized it. She turned to me with a soft voice. "Did Grandma forget mine?" I looked around, pretending to search. "Maybe it's still around here somewhere," I said. That's when I stood up and asked Susan directly, "Hey, is there one for Sophia that hasn't appeared yet?" Susan didn't look surprised. She looked annoyed, as if I were making a scene, as if I had broken some unspoken rule by asking. She looked directly at Sophia and said, "She's not really family." I didn't think it was appropriate. Silence. Not a shocked silence, but a complicit silence. One of the cousins started fiddling with the ribbon on a present. My sister-in-law cleared her throat and busied herself with the trash bag for the wrapping paper. No one looked at me. No one looked at Sophia. I looked at my daughter. Her face didn't crumble. She didn't cry. She just blinked slowly, as if trying to understand what she had done wrong. And then, oh God, it was the way she nodded, a barely perceptible dip of her head, as if she understood something she shouldn't have to understand. I knelt down beside her. My hands were shaking, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "You didn't do anything wrong," I whispered. She nodded again, forced a small smile. "It's okay, Mommy. Maybe next year." I don't know how I didn't collapse right there. Joe was as still as a stone, his jaw clenched, staring straight ahead, as if any movement would cause him to explode. I kept waiting for anyone to speak up to say, "Susan, that's cruel," or "Sophia is family," or even just, "That's not right." But they didn't. And I was so furious. Not just at Susan, but at every adult in that room who chose comfort over courage. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Sophia and leave. But I didn't. I sat there, paralyzed by the moment, trying to balance damage control with dignity. What would happen to Sophia if she saw me lose it? What would happen to Joe if I confronted his mother in front of the entire family? So I stayed silent, and in doing so, I felt like I had betrayed my own daughter. Later, as the atmosphere in the room began to shift, as the children got distracted again and the adults went back to sipping coffee and scrolling on their phones, I watched Sophia quietly disappear into a corner, curling up with her teddy bear, her shoulders tense, her eyes on the floor. She didn't speak for the rest of the morning. She didn't ask for a present. She didn't ask why. She just kept that small, fake smile on her face. And every time someone glanced her way, she made sure to look okay. But I wasn't. That moment burned something in me, a cold, deep fury that I couldn't shake. I didn't know it yet, but Joe had already decided what he was going to do. He had seen enough, and he wasn't going to let that silence stand for another day. That night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. After the last dish was washed, after the wine was poured, after the polite goodnights and the awkward hugs, we went back to the guest room and closed the door. Sophia was already in her pajamas, curled up in bed with her stuffed fox, the one she took everywhere. She didn't ask for a bedtime story. She didn't ask to call Santa. She just lay there, staring at the ceiling. I sat beside her and stroked her back until her breathing evened out. "Mommy," she whispered. "Yes, my love. Do you think maybe she didn't know I was coming?" I swallowed hard. "No, honey. She knew." "Oh." A pause. "Maybe she just doesn't know me yet." I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. "Maybe that's it," I said. "But none of this is your fault. Do you hear me?" She nodded and turned her face into the pillow. When I stood up, Joe was standing in the doorway, holding something in his hand. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at our daughter, looked at me, and then at the envelope. "Enough," he said quietly. "I've let my mother say a lot of things over the years. I've let it slide because it was easier. But not this. Not with Sophia." I stood frozen. I had never seen him like this before. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't shaking. He was just steady. Determined. "What is it?" I asked. He handed it to me. A manila envelope. Inside was a notarized legal document, an updated will, a trust designation, and Sophia's formal adoption record. "She's not just our daughter in our hearts," he said. "She's our daughter on every legal document," he continued. "I added her to everything, the house, the savings, the insurance, the family trust, everything. She is my daughter in every way the law recognizes." I stared at him, incredulous. "You did all this?" "I started the paperwork months ago. I wanted to make it official in every way possible. I just didn't tell anyone. I figured if my mother crossed a line, I'd have what I needed." I felt my knees weaken. "And what are you going to do with it?" He glanced at the clock. "Midnight." He grabbed his coat. "I'm going to show her exactly who Sophia is." I didn't try to stop him. I didn't ask him to calm down. I just nodded and sat down on the bed, listening to the front door creak open and then close behind him. I don't know what she thought when he showed up unannounced. I don't know if she expected a yelling match or an argument, but I know she didn't expect the folder. He walked into her house, his childhood home, and sat down at her kitchen table, facing her. "I'm not here to yell," he said. "I'm not even here to apologize. I'm here to give you a choice." He slid the folder across the table. She opened it. He watched her face as she read. He said, "This is Sophia's name on every legal document that matters. If you want to continue pretending she's not family, that's your choice. But if that's your choice, then I'm no longer your son. Because I will not raise my daughter in a family that treats her like a guest." She tried to interrupt him. He didn't let her. He told her about the way Sophia had clapped for her cousins, about how she had hugged her and called her grandma, about how she had gone to sleep wondering what she had done wrong. Then he said, "You have one chance to fix this, because next Christmas, we will be somewhere else." And then he stood up and left. Back in our guest room, he didn't say much. He just lay down beside me and took my hand. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, just like Sophia had, thinking about all the times I had kept the peace at my daughter's expense. But something shifted that night. Something shifted in both of us. We weren't going to let silence protect cruelty anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. Not just as husband and wife, but as parents. The kind who shows up when it matters. The next morning, something felt different. The house was quiet, but not in that peaceful holiday morning way. It was tense, stiff, like everyone was walking around trying to pretend nothing had happened, but knowing that something had. Sophia was sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of hot chocolate that Joe had made her. She stirred it slowly, humming to herself. Her eyes were brighter than the night before, but still tired. I was just about to ask if she wanted to go for a walk when we heard a knock on the guest room door. It was Susan. She didn't look like herself. The usual composure, the forced smile, the polished perfection. It was all gone. She looked smaller somehow, quieter. "Can I come in?" she asked. Joe didn't answer. I nodded. She stepped inside, holding a wrapped box, medium-sized, silver paper, no bow. She walked over to Sophia, knelt beside her chair, and placed the box in front of her. "I forgot this yesterday," she said. Sophia looked at her, and then at the box. Her hands didn't move towards it. Susan cleared her throat. "I made a mistake." Her voice was low, weary. "And I'm sorry. I was wrong." She didn't say it to me. She didn't say it to Joe. She said it to Sophia. "I let something in my head convince me that family is only blood. But I forgot that family is love. And you have loved me from the beginning, more than I deserve." Sophia looked at me unsure. I gave her a small nod. She carefully unwrapped the present. Inside was a set of professional-grade watercolor paints, not the children's kind, a brand-new sketchbook, and on top, a card. She opened it and read it quietly to herself. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear the words. Then she looked up at Susan. "Do you want me to draw you something?" Susan's eyes filled with tears. "I would like that very much." Sophia nodded. "Okay." No smile, no dramatic reunion, just a simple, "okay?" But that okay meant everything. After Susan left the room, I turned to Joe. He didn't look smug. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just let out a long breath and sat down beside me. "Do you think it will last?" I asked. He shrugged. "I don't know, but it's a start." That night, before bed, Mia drew something in her new sketchbook, a little girl holding hands with two taller figures, a man and a woman. Behind them was a house with a tree. And in the sky, she had drawn a sun with a smiling face. She titled it, Home. She showed it to Joe, and he kissed her forehead. "That's exactly what we are." A few days later, after we had returned home and unpacked our bags, a small envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, just Susan's careful handwriting. Inside was a photograph, an old one, of Joe at about 5 years old, holding his mother's hand. On the back, she had written, "Family is who you fight for." I see that now. Thank you for fighting for her. I didn't expect a miracle. I still don't. Susan is who she is. Proud, stubborn, raised with a definition of family that never left much room for revision. But she had come up against a line she couldn't cross without consequence. And Joe, my quiet, thoughtful husband, had drawn that line with absolute clarity. He didn't yell, he didn't threaten, he didn't shame her. He just laid out the truth and let her choose who she wanted to be. She chose Sophia. And that choice changed everything. Because when someone finally sees your child the way you see them, not as someone to tolerate, but as someone to cherish, the weight you didn't even know you were carrying finally lifts. That Christmas didn't end with fireworks or music or some tear-jerking cinematic moment. It ended with a paintbrush in my daughter's hand and a grandmother learning how to become one. That was enough. We didn't talk much on the drive home. Not because there was tension, but because there was peace. The kind that only comes after something big has passed and left you standing there, a little different, a little stronger. Sophia fell asleep in the back seat with her sketchbook in her lap. I glanced back at one point and saw the same drawing, our family holding hands, now with a small new figure added. A woman with graying hair, standing close enough to be part of the picture, but not quite in the center. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. When we got home, life went back to normal. School started again. Joe went back to work. Sophia painted every afternoon at the kitchen table, filling page after page with animals and trees and little girls who looked a lot like her. One day, she drew a fox sitting at a kitchen table with a teacup. When I asked her about it, she smiled and said, "That's Grandma. She's learning." And maybe that's what stayed with me the most. Not that Susan changed overnight, not that everything magically became perfect, but that Sophia gave her the space to try. Even after being rejected, even after being made to feel invisible, she opened the door again, just a crack, and let love try one more time. Children forgive in ways adults don't always understand. I still think about that moment in Susan's living room, the harshness in her voice, the silence that followed, the weight of not speaking up when I should have. I think about how many times I told myself that keeping the peace was more important than confronting the pain. But that day taught me something different. Peace without truth isn't peace. It's just pretending. And pretending cost my daughter something she should never have lost, not even for a moment. Her sense of belonging, her belief that she mattered to the people she called family. That's not something I will risk again. Since then, things have changed slowly and not always gracefully. Susan calls more often. She asks about Sophia's art, sends little cards in the mail, sometimes handwritten, sometimes awkward, but always genuine. The last one read, "I'm proud of the way you see the world. You've made mine bigger, and that's enough for now. Not because we erased the past, but because we're finally honest about it." Because now, when Susan shows up, she doesn't just bring presents. She brings effort. And that means more than anything wrapped in shiny paper. The truth is, I used to think family was about who raised you, who shared your blood, or who you married. But I know better now. Family is who shows up when it's hard, who looks at you completely and says, "You belong with me." No conditions, no exceptions. And sometimes it takes a line being drawn in the quietest, clearest way for people to finally see what's right in front of them. My husband didn't raise his voice. He raised his daughter. He reminded me that action is love, that silence can be as loud as cruelty, and that sometimes speaking up doesn't mean shouting. It means standing still and holding the truth in your hands without wavering. And Sophia, she reminded me that even after someone hurts you, you can choose grace. Not for them, but for yourself. Because knowing you belong shouldn't be earned. It should be felt. And now Sophia feels it, not just from us, but even finally from her grandmother. So when people ask me how our Christmas was that year, I tell them it was the year something broke and something better began. It was the year my daughter learned that being loved isn't about being chosen once. It's about being chosen again when it matters most. Thank you for listening to our story. If it reminded you of something you've been through or something you're still trying to heal from, please know that you are not alone. Families are complicated, but your worth isn't. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share this video to support us and subscribe to the channel for more moving stories.